The Grand Hall of Concordia Prime sparkled with lights from 1,000 worlds. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood near the center table, her dark blue diplomatic uniform crisp and perfect. She had spent 3 years working toward this moment, 3 years of careful negotiations, late-night talks, and endless patience. The Zelthron Empire finally agreed to meet at the neutral station to discuss peace. Around her, representatives from dozens of species mingled and talked. The air smelled of exotic foods and the subtle chemical signatures of alien atmospheres. Elena smiled at a delegate from the Archon Collective, then turned her attention back to the Zelthron delegation across the room. They were impressive, she had to admit. Tall and covered in dark scales, with eyes that glowed a faint red. Their leader, Commander Vexthal, stood with his arms crossed. His posture screamed arrogance. The Zelthrons had conquered 47 star systems in the last century. They saw themselves as the rightful rulers of this sector of space. But Elena knew something they did not. Humanity had faced empires before. Back on Earth, throughout history, the proud and powerful always made the same mistake. They confused restraint with weakness. A server approached with a tray of drinks. Elena took one, a pale blue liquid that was supposed to be a gesture of goodwill. She raised the glass toward Commander Vexthal. He did not return the gesture. Instead, he whispered something to his aide. The aide smiled, showing too many teeth. Elena drank. The liquid tasted sweet at first, then bitter. Strange. She set the glass down and returned to her notes. The formal negotiations would begin in an hour. She needed to be ready. 5 minutes passed. Her vision blurred. Elena grabbed the edge of the table. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Her legs buckled beneath her. The room spun violently. She could hear voices, distant and echoing, calling her name. Security officers rushed forward, but it was too late. Elena fell to the polished floor. Her body seized once, then went still. Medical personnel swarmed around her, but their instruments told them what everyone already knew. Ambassador Elena Vasquez was dead. The hall erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted. Some fled toward the exits. Others stood frozen in shock. But through it all, Commander Vexthal remained perfectly calm. He raised his clawed hand and the Zelthron delegation began to leave. A human security officer stepped in front of him. "You're not going anywhere." Vexthal looked down at the human. "We have diplomatic immunity. You cannot hold us. We can hold you for questioning." An ambassador was just murdered. The Zelthron commander smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Yes, she was. And now your people must decide what they will do about it. He leaned closer. "We believe you will do nothing. Humans talk about peace and justice, but you lack the spine to enforce either. Your species is soft, weak. We have been patient with your expansion into our territory, but no longer. This is our challenge to you. Respond with force or accept your place beneath our rule." The security officer's hand moved toward his weapon, but stopped. He had orders. Everyone had orders. Never escalate. Always seek diplomatic solutions. That was the human way, or at least that was what they told the galaxy. The Zelthron delegation walked out. Behind them, they left chaos and a dead human ambassador. News of the assassination spread across the galaxy within hours. Every major species received the same message from the Zelthron Empire. They took credit for Elena's death. They called it a necessary action against human arrogance. They dared humanity to respond. The galaxy waited for Earth's reaction. Some species sent messages of sympathy. Others watched with curiosity. A few quietly prepared for war, assuming humanity would lash out in rage. But humanity said nothing. For 72 hours, every human government, every military station, every colony remained silent. No statements, no threats, no diplomatic protests. The silence was absolute and terrifying in its completeness. On the third day, a single transmission went out across secure human military channels. It was encrypted with codes that had never been used before. The message was brief: Protocol Prometheus. Authorization confirmed. All assets active. Rules of engagement. Survival. On the flagship Indomitable, Admiral James Chen sat in his ready room. He was 63 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much war. He had fought in the border conflicts 20 years ago. He had watched friends die in the black emptiness of space. After that, he had supported every peace initiative, every diplomatic effort. Elena Vasquez had been his friend. They had served together during the conflicts. She had been the one to convince him that peace was worth fighting for, worth working toward even when it seemed impossible. Now she was dead. The sealed orders lay open on his desk. He had read them 3 times. His hands shook slightly as he reached for his communicator. All ship commanders report to the bridge. We move in 1 hour. His first officer appeared in the doorway. Sir, the fleet is ready. But are we certain about this course of action? Chen looked up. His eyes were no longer tired. They were cold and hard as steel. The Zelthrons wanted our attention. They thought we were weak because we chose peace. He stood slowly. They forgot that peace is a choice. War is what we're good at. Outside his window, the human fleet began to wake up. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous conversation. Representatives from 200 species gathered to discuss the human situation. 3 days of silence from Earth and its colonies had everyone on edge. Ambassador Trillox of the Methian Federation rose to speak. His species was old, cautious, and respected throughout the galaxy. We must consider the possibility that humanity will not respond at all. Perhaps they recognize that war with the Zelthron Empire would be suicide. The Zelthrons have 500 warships. Humanity has perhaps 100. A laugh echoed through the chamber. It came from the Zelthron section. Commander Vexthal stood, his scales gleaming under the lights. The humans are cowards hiding behind words. We have proven this. They will file protest, hold meetings, and do nothing of substance. This is why they are unworthy of their territory. Other voices joined in, some agreeing, others arguing. But beneath the debate, there was an undercurrent of uncertainty. The human silence was strange, unnatural. On Earth, in a small apartment in Seattle, Elena Vasquez's sister Maria sat surrounded by old photographs. The official notification had come 2 days ago. Her sister was dead, murdered at a peace conference while doing the job she loved. Maria picked up a photo from 15 years earlier. Elena in her Marine uniform, younger and harder around the edges, before she became a diplomat. Before she decided that words were more powerful than weapons. But Maria remembered what Elena had told her the night before she left for Concordia Prime. If something happens to me, don't be sad. I chose this path knowing the risks. And remember, I was a Marine before I was a diplomat. I know what our species is capable of when we need to be. At the time, Maria had not understood. Now watching the news feeds, seeing the military movements beginning across human space, she understood perfectly. In orbit above Mars, the merchant vessel Prosperity began to change. Panels along its hull slid aside, revealing weapon ports. Its reactor signature spiked as military-grade systems came online. Within an hour, the freighter had transformed into a heavy cruiser. Around it, dozens of other merchant ships did the same. On the mining colony of Titan, workers evacuated through tunnels that led to hidden bunkers. Behind them, the mining equipment reconfigured itself. Ore processors became missile foundries. Excavation lasers rotated to point toward the sky. The colony had never been just a colony. It was a fortress waiting. Similar scenes played out across human territory. Defense stations that had registered as research facilities suddenly bristled with weapons. Civilian shipyards revealed military construction bays. Freighters became warships. Scientists became soldiers. The galaxy had been counting ships and adding numbers. They had missed the point entirely. Humanity had not been building a military for show. They had been preparing for the war they hoped would never come. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the fleet assemble. Ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Cruisers, destroyers, carriers, each one painted in the dark gray of human military vessels. But there were far more than anyone outside human command had suspected. His tactical officer looked up from her station. Sir, fleet count is at 417 vessels and climbing. We have assets still coming in from the outer colonies. 417. The galaxy thought humanity had 100 warships. They had been very wrong. Status on the Zelthron Empire? Their forces are concentrated around their border worlds. They are not mobilizing for defense. Intelligence suggests they believe we will negotiate or make a limited strike at most. Chen nodded slowly. They are about to learn a very hard lesson. Open a channel. All frequencies, all languages, broadcast to every species in the galaxy. The communications officer worked quickly. Channel open, sir. Chen looked directly into the camera. His voice was calm, but there was steel beneath every word. This is Admiral James Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. 3 days ago, the Zelthron Empire murdered Ambassador Elena Vasquez during peace negotiations. They have claimed responsibility. They have challenged us to respond. He paused, letting the words sink in. You wanted our attention. You have it. This is not a negotiation. This is not a protest. This is a promise. We are coming. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, in council chambers and military headquarters, on space stations and colony worlds, beings of every species felt a chill run through them. On the Zelthron homeworld, Emperor Zalthkor watched the human transmission with his military advisors. One of them, General Krathix, shifted uncomfortably. My lord, perhaps we should increase our defensive posture. The human's tone suggests... It suggests nothing, the Emperor interrupted. They are posturing, making threats to save face before they retreat. Humans are traitors and diplomats. They do not have the warrior spirit necessary for true conquest. We have fought and defeated 30 species. What are humans compared to that? But even as he spoke, deep scans from the border worlds were coming in. Reports of hundreds of human ships moving at high speed, numbers that did not match any intelligence estimates. The reports piled up on terminals, flashing red warnings that went unread in the Emperor's confidence. In the outer regions of human space, colony ships departed carrying children, elderly and non-combatants. They moved toward secure systems far from any potential combat zone. The evacuations were orderly, practiced, as if humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario for years, because they had been. Elena Vasquez had spent 3 years working for peace. But humanity had spent 30 years preparing for war. They hoped diplomacy would work. They planned for the moment it would not. The human fleet jumped to faster than light speed. 417 warships vanished from human space in coordinated bursts of light. Their destination was already calculated. The border worlds of the Zeltron Empire. The first target was the planet Carthex, a military hub with orbital shipyards and defensive platforms. The Zelthrons had 48 hours before the humans arrived. They spent most of that time not believing it would actually happen. The Zelthron border world of Carthex hung in space like a jewel of military power. 3 orbital shipyards churned out warships. Defense platforms bristled with weapons. On the surface, armies trained in vast facilities. It was one of the Empire's strongest systems, home to 200 warships and 30,000 soldiers. Commander Vexthal himself had taken command of the defense. He stood on the bridge of the battleship Razor's Edge, his flagship. Around him, officers monitored their stations with the calm confidence of a superior force. Report, Vexthal ordered. Human fleet detected at the system's edge. Count as 431 vessels. They are holding position. The sensor officer hesitated. Sir? That is significantly more than our intelligence suggested they possessed. Vexthal waved a clawed hand dismissively. Numbers mean nothing. Quality defeats quantity. Our ships are larger, our weapons more powerful. The humans are merchants playing at war. He opened a channel to the human fleet. Human vessels, you are outmatched. Turn back now, and we will consider this foolish display as payment for your ambassador's insult to our empire. Continue, and we will destroy you. There was a pause. Then a human voice responded, calm and cold. This is Admiral Chen. We are not here to trade threats. We are here to deliver consequences. The human fleet began to move. Vexthal watched his tactical display. The humans were not charging in a disorganized rush. They moved in precise formations, breaking into groups that spread throughout the system. Their approach was methodical, calculated. It reminded him of apex predators surrounding prey. All ships engage at maximum range. Show these humans the price of challenging the Empire. The Zeltron fleet opened fire. Particle beams and plasma missiles streaked across the darkness. The first volley was impressive, lighting up space with destructive energy. But the humans did not flinch. Their ships scattered in patterns that seemed random, but were actually precise maneuvers. Countermeasures deployed. Electronic warfare systems activated. Most of the Zelthron fire missed entirely or struck decoy drones. Then the humans returned fire. What happened next would be analyzed in military academies across the galaxy for generations. The human weapons were not like anything the Zelthrons had faced before. Kinetic bombardment systems accelerated solid metal rods to significant fractions of light speed. They did not explode. They simply hit with the force of nuclear weapons, tearing through shields and armor like paper. Swarm missiles deployed from human carriers, not dozens or hundreds but thousands. Each missile had limited artificial intelligence, capable of coordinating with others. They moved like schools of fish, overwhelming point defense systems through sheer numbers and unpredictable flight patterns. And then there were the electromagnetic pulse weapons. Not just simple EMPs, but cascading systems that fed on a ship's own power grid. When they hit, they did not just disable systems. They caused reactors to overload, turned a ship's own energy against itself. Within the first hour, 20 Zelthron ships were crippled or destroyed. The humans had lost 6. Vexthal stared at his tactical display in disbelief. How? Our intelligence said they did not possess such weapons. These systems are banned by the Galactic Convention on Warfare. His tactical officer looked up, fear showing in his eyes. Sir, the humans never signed that convention. The realization hit like a physical blow. The galaxy had written rules for civilized warfare. Humanity had been politely excluded from those discussions, treated as too new, too primitive to contribute. So they had never agreed to the limitations, reform the fleet, defensive posture around the shipyards. But the humans were not interested in a traditional fleet battle. Their forces split further, some engaging the Zeltron ships while others moved toward the orbital infrastructure. Kinetic strikes hammered the shipyards. Not enough to destroy them completely, but enough to cripple their ability to produce warships. Defense platforms rotated to engage, but human electronic warfare systems confused their targeting. When they did fire, they often hit empty space or their own ships. On the surface of Carthex, military commanders watched the battle unfold above them. General Krathix contacted the flagship. Commander Vexthal, should we prepare for orbital bombardment? They would not dare attack a populated world. The galactic community would condemn them. But even as he spoke, human ships moved into bombardment positions. Chen's voice came across all frequencies, broadcast to every ship, every station, every settlement in the system. All civilian personnel have 6 hours to evacuate military installations. After that time, we will systematically destroy every military asset in this system. We are not targeting civilians. We are eliminating your capacity to make war. Choose wisely. Across Carthex, alarms blared. Civilians flooded out of military bases, heading for designated safe zones. The humans had provided precise coordinates, areas they promised would not be targeted. It was a strange kind of mercy, clinical and cold. 6 hours passed. The Zelthran military had expected a bluff. They were wrong. Human ships began orbital strikes with terrifying precision. Military installations disappeared under kinetic bombardment. Weapons depots, training facilities, command centers. Each strike was calculated to destroy the target with minimal collateral damage. It was not random destruction. It was surgical removal of military capability. Vexthal tried to rally his forces for a counterattack, but the human fleet had split into groups that supported each other perfectly. Every time his ships moved to engage one group, another would strike from an unexpected angle. The humans fought with a coordination that suggested years of practice, of preparation. They had practiced for 30 years. By the end of the second day, the Zelthron fleet at Carthex was reduced to 70 operational ships. The orbital shipyards were twisted metal, unable to produce anything. Ground installations were craters, and the human fleet had lost only 34 vessels, less than 10% of their force. Admiral Chen broadcast again. This was not to the Zelthrons. This was to the entire galaxy. This is not conquest. We have no interest in Zelthran territory. This is consequence. They murdered our ambassador during peace negotiations. They challenged us to respond with force. We are responding. For every military asset they possess, for every weapon they aimed at innocent species, we will exact payment. This is justice. This is humanity's answer. On the Zelthron homeworld, Emperor Zaltkor watched the reports with growing horror. His advisors argued among themselves, panic spreading through the command center. How many ships do we have left? The Emperor demanded. 400, my lord. But if the humans continue this pace, we will lose control of the border worlds within a month. They are not fighting to conquer. They are fighting to cripple us completely. The Emperor's claws dug into the arms of his throne. He had ruled for 40 years. He had conquered 30 species, and now these humans, these soft diplomats who talked about peace, were tearing his empire apart with a ruthlessness that shocked even him. Send a message to the human commander. Offer negotiations. His aide hesitated. My lord, after what we did to their ambassador, send the message. But humanity was not interested in talking. Not yet. They had 3 more border worlds to visit first. The Imperial Palace on the Zelthron homeworld had stood for 500 years. Its walls had witnessed the rise of an empire that spanned 47 star systems. Now those same walls echoed with shouting and accusations. Emperor Zalthakor sat on his throne while his generals argued before him. 3 border worlds had fallen to human attack. Not conquered, not occupied, simply neutralized. Every military installation destroyed. Every warship crippled or killed. The humans moved with machine-like efficiency, system by system dismantling the Empire's military power. General Krathix slammed his fist on the table. We must negotiate immediately. At this rate, we will have no military left within 2 months. The humans are not slowing down. They are not making demands. They are simply destroying everything we have built. Admiral Vexthal, who had barely escaped Carthax with his life, growled in response. Negotiation is surrender. We are the Zelthron Empire. We have conquered dozens of species. We cannot bow to these upstart humans because they got lucky in a few battles. Lucky? Krathix turned on him, fury in his eyes. They have destroyed 6 of our strongest systems with minimal losses. Their weapons, their tactics, their coordination. This is not luck. This is preparation. They have been ready for this war while we were busy celebrating our superiority. The Emperor raised his hand for silence. What are our options? His chief strategist, an old female named Sixra, stepped forward. She had advised 3 emperors and survived by being brutally honest. We have 3 choices, my lord. First, we continue fighting and lose everything. The humans have more ships than we estimated, better weapons than we prepared for, and a willingness to use tactics we consider barbaric. Second, we negotiate now and accept whatever terms they demand. Third, we strike at them directly. Explain the third option. We send our best operatives to Earth. We assassinate their leadership as they assassinated our dignity. We show them that 2 can play at their game. The Emperor leaned back. It was tempting. But Vexthal, despite his bluster, shook his head. We tried that once already. That is why we are in this situation. Before anyone could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber. My lord, urgent news from the Galactic Council. They are convening an emergency session regarding the human military campaign. The Emperor stood. At last, the other species will pressure the humans to cease their aggression. We are not alone in this galaxy. But when the Galactic Council convened, the discussion was not what the Zelthrons expected. Ambassador Trillox of the Methian Federation stood to speak. We are here to discuss the human military response to the Zelthran Empire's assassination of Ambassador Elena Vasquez. The Zelthrans have filed a complaint that human tactics violate standards of civilized warfare. A human representative, Ambassador John Reeves, stood. He was younger than Elena had been, but his eyes carried the same determination. The Zelthron Empire murdered our ambassador during peace negotiations. They broadcast their responsibility across the galaxy. They challenged us to respond. We have responded. As for our tactics, we never signed the Galactic Convention on Warfare. We were excluded from those discussions, if you recall, treated as too primitive to have a voice. Now you complain that we do not follow rules we had no part in creating. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Many species had voted to exclude humanity from military discussions. Now that decision seemed very foolish. The Zelthron representative, a diplomat named Velkoth, rose angrily. They are using banned weapons, kinetic bombardment, AI-guided systems, electromagnetic warfare that violates every principles you wrote without us, Reeves interrupted. Tell me, Ambassador, how many species has your empire conquered? How many worlds have you stripped of resources? How many civilians died in your expansion? Velkoth hesitated. That is not relevant. It is absolutely relevant. We have evidence. Reeves activated a holographic display. Documents appeared, floating in the center of the chamber. Military records, communications orders. These are Zelthron military files that we recovered from their command networks during our operations. They detail war crimes against 14 species over the last century, orbital bombardment of civilian populations, use of biological weapons, systematic torture of prisoners. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives demanded to examine the documents. The Zelthron delegation tried to leave, but security blocked the exits. The evidence was damning and detailed. While the Galactic Council descended into accusations and investigations, the human military continued its campaign. The 4th border world, Draxon, fell in 3 days. The 5th, Mexthar, lasted 5 days before its military command surrendered. But the Zelthrons had one final card to play. A strike team of 20 elite Zelthron warriors infiltrated human space using stolen civilian credentials. Their target was the human command structure. If they could not win the war, they could at least kill the leaders directing it. They reached Earth's orbital defense grid using a captured freighter. Security was tight, but the Zelthrons were among the best special forces in the galaxy. They had trained for missions like this. Their objective was the Human Military Command Center in Geneva. Admiral Chen was scheduled to make a public address there in 3 days. The team would strike during that address, killing him and as many human leaders as possible. But human intelligence was better than the Zelthrons realized. The strike team was detected the moment they entered Earth's system. Security forces tracked them as they moved through the orbital stations, through the atmospheric descent, through the city itself. When they reached the building housing the command center, armed soldiers were waiting. The battle was brief and brutal. The Zelthrons fought with the desperation of beings who knew they were already dead. They killed 6 human soldiers before being overwhelmed. In the end, 18 of the 20 Zelthrons were captured alive. The other 2 died in the fighting. What happened next shocked the galaxy more than the battles. The captured Zelthrons were given medical treatment. They were allowed to contact their families. Then, in a public ceremony broadcast across every human world and to the wider galaxy, they were tried for attempted assassination and acts of war. The trial took 6 hours. The evidence was presented. The Zelthrons were allowed to speak in their defense. Then they were executed. Quickly, without ceremony but publicly. Admiral Chen addressed the galaxy afterward. These warriors followed their orders. They did what they believed was right for their empire. But we are not an empire. We are humanity and we have laws. They attempted to murder our leaders during wartime. The penalty is death. We do not torture. We do not imprison indefinitely. We judge and we execute sentence. This is our justice. But the broadcast did not end there. Chen activated another display. However, we are also not blind to irony. The Zelthrons sent assassins to kill our leaders in retaliation for their murder of our ambassador. This is not justice. This is escalation. So let me make our position absolutely clear. More documents appeared. The same files that had been shown to the Galactic Council, but now highlighted and annotated. The Zelthron Empire has committed war crimes against 14 species. They have murdered millions. They assassinated our ambassador because they saw her as weak as an easy target. They were wrong. Now they see our military and call us barbarians for using effective weapons. They are wrong again. Chen's voice hardened. We are not barbarians. We are humans. We sought peace for 30 years. We built our military not for conquest but for defense. We trained, we prepared, we hoped we would never need it. Then the Zelthrons killed Elena Vasquez. She was a Marine before she was a diplomat. She knew what we were capable of. Her last words to her sister were, "Make sure my death serves our people." He paused, letting the silence stretch. We are making it count. On the Zelthron homeworld, Emperor Zalthkor watched the broadcast alone in his private chambers. His generals were arguing in the command center. His people were beginning to panic as human forces moved closer to the core worlds, and he sat in silence, understanding at last what he had unleashed. The humans had been waiting for an excuse. No, that was not quite right. They had been hoping never to need their weapons. But once provoked, once given justification, they fought with a cold efficiency that was more terrifying than any rage. His door opened. Sixera entered without announcement. "My lord, we have a decision to make. The humans have sent terms. Terms? They are willing to negotiate? Not negotiate. These are the requirements for cessation of hostilities. They are not offering us a choice in the matter. We accept or they continue until we have no military left at all." The Emperor looked at the document she handed him. As he read, his claws tightened on the paper until it crumpled. These terms would end the Empire. Yes, my lord, but they would allow our people to survive. Outside his window, the Zelthron homeworld continued its rotation, unaware that the Emperor was about to choose between his pride and his species' future. The human terms were simple and absolute. Emperor Zalthakor read them 3 times, hoping he had misunderstood. He had not. Complete disarmament of all Zelthron military forces within 6 months. All warships to be decommissioned under human supervision. all weapons manufacturing facilities to be dismantled. The Empire would be allowed defensive forces only, enough to maintain basic security on each world, but nothing capable of interstellar aggression. Reparations to every species the Zelthrons had harmed. The payment plans would be supervised by a galactic tribunal. It would take generations to repay the debt, but it would be paid. War crimes trials for all military leadership involved in atrocities. The trials would be conducted by an independent galactic court, not by humans alone, but humans would provide the evidence and enforce the sentences. And finally, the dissolution of the Empire itself. Each Zelthron world would become independent, free to govern itself but under a protection agreement with humanity for the next 50 years. No single Zelthron government would have the power to rebuild the military machine that had terrorized this region of space. The Emperor called his council. They gathered in the strategy room, exhausted and defeated. Few spoke as he read the terms aloud. "These demands destroy everything we have built," General Krathik said quietly. 500 years of history ended. 500 years of conquest, Sixra corrected. "We built an empire on the backs of other species. Now the bill has come due." Vexthal slammed his fist on the table. "We still have ships. We still have soldiers. We can fight. For how long?" The Emperor's voice was tired. 2 months, 3? The humans have lost less than 10% of their fleet. They are not slowing down. Every day we fight, we lose more. Soon we will have nothing left but pride, and pride does not feed our people. Silence fell. They all knew he was right. The war was already over. It had been over since Carthex. They had just been too proud to see it. "There is one final consideration," Sixra said. She activated a display showing human fleet movements. "The humans could have attacked our homeworld first. They could have struck at our heart, killed our government, enslaved our people. They chose not to. They destroyed only military targets. They warned civilians. They offered surrender terms instead of extinction. These are not the actions of a species that wants to rule us. They want to neutralize us, yes, but not destroy us." The Emperor looked around the room. He saw fear, anger, and shame in the eyes of his advisors. But he also saw understanding. They had started this war by murdering an ambassador. The humans were ending it with terms that, while harsh, were not genocidal. "Very well. Contact the human fleet. We accept their terms." The message went out within the hour. The fighting stopped immediately. Human ships held their positions while Zelthron forces began the process of disarmament. It was a strange feeling, this silence after weeks of constant warfare. The Galactic Council convened again, this time to witness the formal treaty signing. The Zelthron Empire no longer had an emperor in any meaningful sense. Zalthkor attended the ceremony as a representative, nothing more. He signed the documents with a clawed hand that shook slightly. Admiral Chen signed for humanity. His hand was steady. He did not smile or gloat. He simply did what needed to be done. But the treaty signing was only the beginning. The real work began afterward. War crimes trials started within a month. Zelthron military leaders were brought before galactic courts. The evidence from recovered files was overwhelming. Commanders who had ordered the deaths of millions were sentenced to imprisonment or execution, depending on their crimes. Some Zelthrons called it victor's justice. Most of the galaxy called it long overdue. Bexathal was among those tried. He had been the one to order Elena Vasquez's assassination. The trial lasted 3 days. The evidence was clear. He was sentenced to death. Before the sentence was carried out, Admiral Chen visited him in his cell. "Why are you here?" Vexthal asked. He sat on the simple bed, no longer in his military uniform but in plain prison clothing. "To understand. You started this war. You killed a woman who spent years working for peace. I need to know why." Vexthal laughed bitterly. "Because we thought you were weak. We had conquered so many species that fell easily. We saw your diplomats talking about peace and cooperation, and we mistook that for inability to fight. We were wrong. Is that what you wanted to hear?" "No," Chen said quietly. "I wanted to hear that you regretted it, that you understood what your pride cost your people. I regret nothing. We were strong. We took what we wanted. That is the way of the galaxy." Chen studied him for a long moment. That was the way of the galaxy. Not anymore. He left without another word. Vexthal was executed the following day, but not all stories ended in execution or imprisonment. Many Zelthron soldiers had simply followed orders, fought for what they believed was their duty. These were not tried for war crimes. They were allowed to return to their families, to their worlds, to rebuild their lives in a galaxy that now looked very different. The Zelthran worlds adjusted to independence slowly. Some embraced it, creating new governments focused on trade and peaceful expansion. Others struggled, clinging to the old ways, but without the military power to enforce imperialism, they had to adapt or fail. Humanity did not occupy their worlds. True to their word, they provided security but not governance. Human ships patrolled Zelthran space, protecting against external threats and ensuring no single faction could rebuild the military machine. But the Zelthrons governed themselves. Other species watched this carefully. They saw that humanity kept its promises. They saw strength tempered with restraint, and they adjusted their diplomatic approaches accordingly. The Galactic Council officially recognized humanity as a major power. Human representatives were invited to participate in all discussions, including military policy. No one suggested excluding them anymore. No one wanted to repeat the Zelthron mistake. On Earth, a memorial was built for Elena Vasquez. It stood in Geneva near the command center she had worked so hard to make unnecessary. The memorial was simple, just a statue of her in her diplomatic uniform with her words inscribed below. Peace is not the absence of the capacity for violence. It is the choice not to use it. The memorial became a symbol throughout human space. Diplomats visited it before their assignments. Military officers paid their respects. And every year on the anniversary of her death, a ceremony was held to remember not just her, but all those who worked for peace in a dangerous galaxy. Admiral Chen attended the first ceremony. He stood before the statue for a long time, remembering his friend, remembering the Marine who had chosen to talk instead of fight. "We won your peace, Elena," he said quietly. "We just had to win a war first." After the ceremony, he returned to his office one final time. His retirement papers were already filed. He had fought his last war. He had done what needed to be done. Now it was time for younger officers to maintain the peace he had secured. But before he left, he recorded one final message for the fleet. "To all human military personnel, we have demonstrated our capability. We have shown the galaxy what we can do when provoked. Now we must show them something harder. We must show them that we can be trusted with power, that we seek peace genuinely, not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to choose it. The warrior's path is easy. The peacekeeper's path is hard. Walk it anyway. That is humanity's true strength." The message was distributed fleet-wide. It became required viewing at the Academy. And in the years that followed, a new generation of human officers learned the lesson Elena Vasquez had tried to teach, and that humanity had proven in blood and fire. Peace was a choice, but it was a choice only the strong could make. 20 years after the war, a young Zelthron student visited Earth on a cultural exchange program. She stood before Elena's memorial reading the inscription. A human guide stood nearby. "Did you know her?" the young Zelthron asked. "No, she died before I was born. But I know what she represents." "What is that?" The guide smiled. "Hope that words are stronger than weapons, and the knowledge that if words fail, we have the strength to make them listen." She gestured to the statue. "Your people learned that lesson the hard way, but you learned it. Now we work together toward the peace she wanted." The young Zelthron nodded slowly. In her school, they taught about the war as a cautionary tale, about how arrogance and aggression had nearly destroyed their civilization, and about how humanity had given them a chance to rebuild instead of grinding them into dust. "She must have been very wise," the student said. She was. And more importantly, she was willing to die for what she believed in. That is why we remember her. Not because she was perfect, but because she showed us what we should be. They stood in silence for a moment. Two beings from species that had once been at war, now standing together in peace. It was not the peace of the weak or conquered. It was the peace of mutual respect, earned through trial and choice. In the end, that was humanity's answer to the galaxy's challenges. They would seek peace first always, but if someone forced war upon them, they would fight with everything they had. And when the war was over, they would offer not occupation, but partnership. That was the lesson Elena Vasquez had taught. That was the legacy she left behind. And that was why humanity had answered the Empire's challenge with overwhelming force and unexpected mercy. Because peace, they had proven, was not weakness. It was the choice of the strong.